Hello and welcome to Aston Originals. I'm Helen and I'm joined today by three Aston University PhD students to have a chat about their postgraduate studies. Postgraduate research can be a bit of a mystery to those who aren't familiar with how it works. Perhaps nobody in your family has ever done postgraduate study. Perhaps it has never occurred to you to investigate it. Perhaps you think you need a superhuman brain and the IQ of Stephen Hawking's, or perhaps you don't think it'd fit around your other commitments. Well, this podcast will hopefully help to demystify postgraduate research, show you that postgraduate research is for everyone, and of course, convince you that Aston University is the best place to do it. So our guests today are Saira, Calum, and Sarah. So can you all introduce yourselves and your PhDs? Saira, if you go first.
Yeah, sure. So my name's Sarah Hussain. I am doing a PhD in child hearing loss, specifically with a condition called microtia, which is where the ear anatomy doesn't fully develop. And so, what is that like for a child or a young person experiencing that for them, and sort of the family experience as well?
Okay, Sarah.
Hi everyone, I'm Sarah Asplin. I completed my PhD in Chemical Engineering and Applied Chemistry at Aston in 2022, and I'm now a Knowledge Research Exchange Associate in the Energy and Bioproducts Research Institute.
And Calum?
Hi, I'm Calum. I'm a third year MIBTP PhD student, and my project is titled Elucidating the Molecular Targets of Bacterial Nanosyringes, which in English essentially translates to where does PVC-13 or the bacterial nanosyringes bind on the cell membrane?
Okay, well, maybe you can explain a bit more about that later. You've all had very different paths to get to where you are. So tell us about how you actually got to doing a PhD and how you got started.
Yeah, so I actually work at Aston University. I've been here for about 7.5 years now, and I come from a clinical background, having worked in the NHS. And so I've been working with students for a number of years, and my roles sort of developed over time. And I'm now more involved in research and supervising students. And actually having sort of master's level background is really helpful. But it would be sort of personal and professional growth to do a PhD. And so the area that I'm interested in, microtia, is quite a rare condition, and so there's a charity that operates in the UK, and they were looking to sort of fund some projects, and I suggested, well, hey, no one's actually spoken to kids, let's speak to kids, and that's sort of very fitting with my background and my sort of area of I wouldn't say expertise, but area that I enjoy. And so they were happy to fund me. And so I'm doing my PhD part-time at Aston whilst working full-time.
So you didn't go straight into it. It was kind of a decision later on.
It was a decision later on. So the master's that I did as well, it was funded through the NHS. So you do it over 3 years as opposed to 1 year. And so you work and study at the same time. So I was quite used to that. And I wanted a little bit of a break, if I was honest. And then it came, and my role was quite clinical. And sort of as it developed, I thought, actually, now's the time to possibly do this. So having worked and studied before, it was quite a natural sort of fitting to do that again.
Okay, great. How about you, Sarah?
So for myself, when I first came to university to do my master's in chemical engineering, I hadn't really considered postgraduate research. It wasn't until I did my master's research project, also in Edbury, that I was starting to consider it. Because from the start, I didn't actually think I was capable. I actually had to resit my A-levels just to get into university to start off with.
Wow, okay.
So it was, just completing the master's was quite a step up. So then to consider research after that.
And so that's quite encouraging anyway. You started having failed your A-levels and then resat, and now you're doing a PhD.
Yeah.
And then good going.
Although some of my other family have also been to university and done like bachelor's, master's, no one in my family before that had got a doctorate.
Well done. How about you, Calum?
So I started my undergraduate degree in 2015 at the University of Sussex. I did biology purely because I enjoyed science at the time, and then stayed on to do a master's because I enjoyed uni. I liked having basically zero responsibilities and drinking 5 times a week. And it was during my master's when it kind of clicked that this research side could be something that I do as a career. So for my fourth year master's project, it's when you're working in the lab, it's when you get that kind of first key discovery, or you've found something new to the world. That was a really big moment, and that was kind of a stand back, like, wow, look, I'm awesome. Look what I've just done, and look what I found out. No one else has ever done this before. So that's when I realised, okay, cool, PhD is the next step if I want to stay in science and stay in research.
And drink 5 times a week.
And maybe not 5, but maybe still 3 or 4. So then I always knew I ended up having a couple of years out after my master's before starting my PhD. And I always knew I wanted to take at least one for financial reasons, because I had no savings and was in a bunch of debt. Alcohol's probably related to all of that. So I always knew I was going to take a year out, and then in that year start applying for PhDs. I applied for dozens and dozens, and admittedly my CV probably wasn't the most attractive for PhD supervisors, because I didn't have any additional lab experience on top of what I'd done in my undergrad project and master's project. And I came out of university with a 2-1 and a merit in my master's, which in sort of a competitive PhD landscape doesn't sell itself from that initial viewing of a CV or an application. So it ended up taking longer than anticipated to get into my PhD. But I think over that, so I took 2 years out rather than 1.
Yeah.
But I think over those 2 years, I learned how to sell myself a lot better in interviews and really pull out my strengths. So in my master's project, my strengths were like cryo-EM and negative stain electron microscopy, which other master's students wouldn't necessarily have. So I learned to kind of like sell this. This is what your strength is. Make sure supervisors are aware of that. And I think that eventually worked out.
So that's kind of, I guess, what you'd advise somebody else to do if they're kind of not sure, is really make sure that you know what your strengths are.
Yeah. And know what your strengths are. In your applications and on your CV, really highlight them as much as possible. And then when you're going into interviews, say someone asks, tell me about your lab experience. That's the first thing you have to mention, because that's also going to be the most memorable thing for the supervisor interviewing you as well.
Yeah. Don't build up to it. Just be like, I aced because.
Yeah.
That's why.
Yeah. This is what makes me different.
So what made you choose Aston in the end?
It was predominantly the PhD program. So I'm part of MIBTP, which stands for the Midlands Integrative Bioscience Training Partnership. What I really liked about the program is so it's a 4-year PhD, but the first year is pretty much exclusively a training year. So it starts with the first 3 months, it almost feels like you're an undergrad again, because you're in lectures and workshops and seminars, albeit a lot more hours per week than you would be at an undergrad level. And then you do a series of rotations before, 3-month rotations in different labs before eventually starting your main project at the start of your second year. And I think for me, because I had a couple of years out, I knew I wouldn't necessarily be as strong, or my skills wouldn't be as relevant as someone coming straight from an undergrad or master's level. I needed that year to catch up almost, and I felt it was really valuable, and I'm glad I picked Aston for this particular program.
Yeah. How about you guys? Obviously you were working here. I guess that's why you picked Aston.
So obviously I was working here, but I didn't have to do my PhD here. I could have chosen anywhere else. But there are 2 things. So one, the PhD supervisors I've got, they are, brilliant and amazing. And I think their sort of ethos is very much, and sort of our department, audiology department, is around translational research. So making sure that the research is, clinically relevant. And so you can kind of put things into practice straight away, which is brilliant. And so I thought, my supervisors have got that experience, and they were so supportive. And they actually taught me at my undergraduate at University of Bristol. So I already knew them from a little while back. And then obviously working with them in different sort of capacities. And then the second aspect was around sort of the level of support Aston gives. So having, spoken to other friends that have had done PhDs at different universities, I felt that Aston did quite a lot for PhD students. And at the time, I kind of felt like, oh, I'm not a real PhD student because I'm also a member of staff, but I am a real PhD student. And working at Aston and seeing all the different sort of services that we have, like the Learning Development Centre and the library with our information specialists, I'd worked with them with my own undergraduate and master's students, so I knew what they could provide. And actually just, from writing my proposal to sort of the early stages of the PhD to now having done sort of my first study, they've been really wonderful and supportive, and I've been able to sort of access these services. And I just felt that was sort of a bonus for Aston. And it helps being sort of in the same place where I'm working.
Yeah.
But no, I just think it's got a nice sort of community feel, and the level of support I'm getting for these different sort of services was a key bonus.
And how about you?
So I did my undergraduate study at Aston. So when I went on to my master's project with my supervisor, it wasn't until that point that when I was enjoying the master's level research, like as discussed earlier, that I realised that might be something that I want to pursue more. So growing up in the local area, Cannock, South Lincolnshire, so yeah, I lived at home and commuted, so I kind of just wanted to stay close to home. I was comfortable with the area, and I knew the staff, again, they're very supportive, what facilities were available to me.
Great. Yeah, there's 3 very different routes into Aston. What do you guys think is the best thing about doing postgrad research at Aston?
I reckon being able to spend your time with like the coolest, most interesting people and most passionate people is the best thing about being a PhD student. So in my lab, there's world leading researchers, like experts in their topic, who are extremely passionate about what they're doing, and that rubs off on you. I think you kind of leech their passion a little bit, and make yourself more enthusiastic for what you're doing. So I think your peers, the academics around you, spending time with some exceptionally smart people, and just being in constant kind of awe of like, wow, how's this person so smart? That's probably the best thing about being a PhD student. But I think also just being able to schedule your time however you want to schedule it. So if you say in any given week you want to go to a conference this week, okay, that's great. Go to the conference, meet some cool people, network, learn lots of new things. Or say you want to pursue some aspect of personal development, or you want to network with maybe someone relevant to the career that you're looking at doing after your PhD. You can totally go and just do that. Or if you want to take your project or your research in a different direction to what you are doing currently, there's no one that's going to stop you doing that, because your project is what you are passionate about and is what you're interested in. So you can just take it any direction that you love, and that's definitely the best thing. That's also the best thing about being a PhD.
I think for me, being a PhD student, it's sort of really interesting to be able to sort of wear that student hat and have that time, like you said, sort of learn and grow and go to conferences and be able to sort of hear from other experts and sort of share where I'm up to as well, which is really great. And I think the nice thing about being at Aston, again, is that sort of focus and that support around having that translational aspect. I think coming from a clinical background where, sort of the NHS constitution is about putting the patient at the heart of everything that you do, it's a way that I can still do that, even though I'm not seeing patients clinically every single day. And so part of my study, and again, Aston is quite big on this, is involving PPIE, so patient and public involvement and engagement. Okay. So I've been able to speak to sort of other audiologists, other organisations, sort of the children and families that have the condition, So I've been able to sort of incorporate all that and sort of build the existing network that I've got. And for me, with my dual role, I've been able to then ask, these various people, hey, would you like to come and give a talk to our students and tell them about what it's like to have this condition, or hear from this person about the latest technology in audiology. So I kind of get to do a bit of both, which is great.
So for myself, I think it was just that when I started my PhD, the variability in everyone's different type of work. So no 2 days were the same, even though you might all be in the same research group. Everyone's looking at different things, and that's really interesting. And because you're doing things that are new, it's challenging. There's a lot of problem solving, and that aspect of it is something that I really enjoyed.
That's a good answer. So you're sort of straddling kind of proper work and studenthood, right? Is there much kind of going on the social side of things, presumably, for PhD students around here?
So Aston, in particular, there's a society for PhD students specifically, called the Aston Postgraduate Research Society, and they're
Inventive.
invented, it's APRS, and they're probably one of the societies in uni that have the highest numbers of members and also the highest active participation. So they have regular events, pretty much monthly, in terms of they might have careers talks, or they host a thing called Lunch with Professor X, which is where they get a professor down to kind of talk about their career and give top tips and advice for PhD students. Coffee mornings, but I'd say the most participated events that APRS host, they'll have a Christmas event, a summer ball, a Halloween event, sometimes an Easter one, where they go all out. We'll go out to a nice restaurant, or they'll do some fun activity. Like the Halloween one was axe throwing.
Nice. Nobody lost any ears or anything?
Am I allowed to say? No one lost any. No one lost any ears. And all of these events are heavily subsidised by the student union because they want to encourage participation amongst PhD students. But then also myself and a lot of my PhD peers are part of sports and societies at the uni as well. And there's high postgrad participation within many like sports teams or societies. So if you are, say, you're nervous about attending because you might be the only person kind of within your age bracket, should we call it, that's not the case. Within all teams, so I'm personally part of running and swimming. There's many other postgrad students in the running team and many other postgrad students in the swimming team.
So that's going to be good for anybody who's new coming to Aston as well. Like, there's lots of opportunities to meet people and do stuff.
Okay.
Did either of you guys go axe throwing?
No. But as being an undergraduate at Aston as well, I was already involved in some of those sports clubs and societies that Elite mentioned. So the kayaking club is something that I've been part of pretty much since I joined Aston. And in the past I also did a bit of the mountaineering club, so rock climbing.
Okay.
Do you find there's lots of PhD students in those societies as well?
Yeah, a reasonable amount. Maybe not so much kayaking, but that's probably one of the smallest clubs on campus.
Yeah.
I think there's the presumption that you need to know how to kayak, but they actually teach you everything anyway. Yeah, and also I probably spend as much time swimming as I did kayaking anyway.
Yeah, that would be what would put me off. I can't swim, so that would probably.
That's
Definitely
no requirement.
Do you have any funny stories about your PhDs? Must you like any particular experiments blown up?
Embarrassing stories, lessons in not being silly in the lab, maybe. Talk to health and safety are listening. No, just I won't go into too much detail. There's one time I was joking about knocking my friend's samples off the bench and then accidentally did it. Yeah, that was pretty tragic. Yeah, that was. I had to buy him a lot of pints to make up for it.
So how long did it take him to remake all those songs?
Probably about 3 or 4 days to get back to that same point. Ouch. It was a valuable lesson. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, fair enough. How about you, lot?
I think for me, I obviously it was part of the PhD. You have to do some sort of mandatory training, and there's things around sort of presentation skills and this and that and the other. And I started my PhD during COVID, so everything was online. And so every sort of great breakout room sort of session, we'd have, a good conversation. And then towards the end, they'd be like, oh, how do you know this stuff? I'm like, I teach here. And then it just goes radio silence. And they're just like, oh, don't know what to do now. I'm like, I don't know what to do either. Like, I'm one of you, it's okay.
Yeah, I suppose, that could be interesting if, like, you're, somebody who's been teaching you is then sitting in the same, like, the same training as you.
That's not happened yet. But it is nice sort of to meet, like, other PhD students. And I think the nice thing, again, about Aston is that there's so many different people. So, like myself, I've done it later and I'm doing it whilst I'm working. And so, like you said, you started a little bit later a spell, you had a bit of a break. So it's not like you have to sort of just carry on doing it, but that's also a great option for those people that really want to. So yeah, it's nice for me to meet other people that are sort of part-time and kind of going through the same struggles, because you kind of feel like you're behind all the time. And then you have to stop for a second and think, actually, no, like I'm part-time, it's okay.
Yeah.
And sort of just having that sort of moral support from everyone.
Yeah.
I think that feeling of being behind all the time is reciprocated in full-time students.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing or a bad thing.
You never quite. I think it's just part of PhD life is you always think you should be further ahead than where you are, but actually,
If anyone
research
says,
takes time.
if anyone says it's going to be 3 years, it's probably going to be 4. If it's 4, it's going to be 5.
Then I'll be here forever.
Yeah, I've got a few friends doing PhDs who are still doing PhDs after a while, but they'll finish them in the end.
I just want the nice cap at the end on graduation day.
It is a good cap. Yeah,
It's a good cap.
So, I mean, obviously, you've been fitting your PhD in around your work commitments. You've got other commitments, haven't you, which we need to mention. Sarah, do you want to tell us about your robot?
Yes, so in my spare time, I remember Team Monsoon, which is a UK BattleBots team. So we compete in events in the UK, but also in the USA, with our combat robot. So it's 113 kilos with a blade that spins at 113 miles per hour. And the objective is to destroy your opponent robot within 2 minutes.
Who watch videos is impressive.
Yeah, it's terrifying. You definitely wouldn't want to get in the way of that one.
Are we allowed to link the YouTube URL in the show notes, or is that?
I'm sure we can find a way to do that. I think people need to see this. I might put a picture in. Have you got any particularly interesting commitments? Obviously, you run and you swim.
Yeah, so I mean, outside of my PhD, I do like triathlons.
Oh wow!
So that's my hobby. Doing hobbies, putting myself in significant amounts of pain on a weekly basis.
Rather you than me.
Yeah, so I run 3 times a week, swim 3 times a week, cycle also maybe 3 times a week. Try and hit the gym. Sleep. Remind me, what's that one again? Yeah, sometimes. Because I compete at a reasonably high level for triathlon, so I found it's difficult to compete at that same level without say I was to drop my training down, I won't quite be at the same level. So it's just time management, trying to manage X amount of sessions per week on top of PhD work. But I enjoy doing it, so
And stop sleeping.
yeah.
I do also have a few more relaxed hobbies.
What you mean, battling robots
gardening,
isn't relaxing?
Gardening, allotment. And then about a year ago, I started playing wheelchair basketball.
Oh, okay.
That I wouldn't say wheelchair basketball is relaxing.
No.
I remember watching it.
I've seen wheels. That's probably I was going to say that's about as
Less
destructive as
destructive than
BattleBots, is it?
Everyone comes out in one piece.
Okay, that's true. Yeah.
Thankfully.
What has been the best experience in your PhD so far? The best single thing that you've done?
Handing my thesis in and then doing my viva.
Well, I think it should be. That's the summary of
Yeah.
everything you've just spent the last
Past
4 years
directions.
doing.
Yeah. That's good though, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the moment you become.
Biggest release, yeah.
I think that's my goal now. Just
Yeah.
like I just need to get there and get that feeling. So part of my funding is that I get to also go down to sort of meet the charity, and they have an annual family event day in June, and so it was really nice to be able to go back and actually say, hey, this is what I've done so far, and get to actually meet the families and get to meet the children. So that's always sort of really fun. I've been down twice. So I'll get to go again, and I'm hoping in a couple of years I can be like, oh look, I'm finished, and this is what's happened now, and this is what I'm doing, and it's all thanks to all of you. So yeah, that, and I'm looking forward to graduation day as well.
And your hat.
And my hat, yes, definitely.
Don't know.
I think so. I did in my first year. I did a 3-month placement with the Birmingham's tech transfer team.
Okay.
As part of the program, you're required to do a 3-month placement in a science career, but not based in the lab. So that every university will have a technology transfer team, which is responsible for setting up, basically commercializing any research that academics want to commercialize. So they'd be responsible for setting up the spin out or startup companies and obtaining any intellectual property rights on, on these discoveries and this research. I really enjoyed that placement. And coming to the end of it, it was almost a bit of an eye opener on what I want to do sort of for the rest of my life. So I'm hoping to go into patent law post PhD.
Oh wow.
So because I'm up to that point, I was almost slightly anxious, not knowing what I wanted to do. And I know a lot of people are in the same situation. They might get to that point in their life and they still don't know what they want to do. And I was very much that, getting almost like nearly a year into my PhD, still not knowing what am I going to be doing for the next 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
But that was eye-opening, because I really enjoyed the placement. I liked the legal side of science. So that was the best moment.
So that's a good thing to know anyway, that, when you do a PhD, you're not tied specifically to that project for the rest of your life. So
Yeah.
you're as well picking something you like and then kind of worrying about what next later.
I think a lot of people as well think I've done my PhD in research in academia. That means I have to stay in academia, or I have to stay in research in a similar field. And you don't. You can leave. The skill set you obtain throughout your PhD set is so broad. You can basically do anything you set your mind to.
Good to know. So now we actually are on to the very last question. They will go around the table. So the last one is, can you sum up why someone should do postgraduate research at Aston University? Saira, go.
I think the level of support and sort of the community that you'll have at Aston, that I've experienced, that we've experienced, I think is something to definitely lure you here.
Sarah?
I think Aston it's a generally really friendly campus, and all of the staff are very supportive. The research institutes that, at least at Ebury, where I did my research, everyone's very collaborative. You get a lot of support from staff. And I really enjoyed my time here.
Good answer. Calum?
I'd say Aston's it's a very supportive environment for PhD students. So I've done short placements at Uni of Birmingham, for instance, and Uni of Warwick. Compared to those two, Aston has been the most supportive for PhD students in terms of from supervisors, from the academic community, from your peers within your PhD program. You're given a lot of time from the academic. It doesn't even necessarily need to be your supervisor. Everyone's got time for you. Everyone can answer your questions, help you with a particular problem or challenge that you're facing. in a not in kind of a different way to they would at other unis, for instance.
Yeah. Good. Well, thank you for joining us on this podcast today. And for everybody listening, we hope that helped. If you have any further questions about postgraduate study at Aston University, please visit www.aston.ac.uk/postgraduate, fairly easy to remember, where you can find details about courses, sponsorship and contact details if you want to discuss your options.